Sick Harrison Price for Thursday, June 26, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center, and the show presentation of Bet365. Matt Sakaris back here alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogers, and hitting switches and conducting things. So, what did I miss?
The Canucks are a National Hockey League team. They will continue to be one.
Conducting National Hockey League business.
Yes.
For a National Hockey League player of some repute.
Some repute is a very
sanitized way of
saying it. You know, we're not saying yay or nay. It's just some repute.
More on Evander Kane here in a moment, but first, he features in the Whistler Golf Club poll question as well. Do you see Evander Kane helping Elias Pettersson's bounce back? Yes or no? Blake Price, what says you?
I think, again, said this yesterday, the profile of the player isn't really my biggest issue here. The profile of the on-ice player, and yes, even the penalties taken. Don't love that, but generally does come with the territory of a power forward. So if you strip away everything else, the on-ice profile of Evander Kane, not my biggest issue here at all. And in fact, yeah, I think he can be part of the recipe, to help rejuvenate Elias Pettersson. But that's a big stripping of away. It's a lot of Varsol to strip away all the other stuff. And the question is, can that be accomplished? That it's just Evander Kane, the on-ice player. If that's all that the Canucks are acquiring, yeah, I think he can. It's a bit of an if, though.
I am also going to tackle this first from the on-ice perspective. It's just so much easier, so much simpler.
Yeah.
Simpler times. I think a big power forward like Evander Kane, who still plays a very physical game, despite all the miles on his body and all the injuries. We saw that in the postseason. I think he could potentially open up room for Elias Pettersson in the offensive zone. He's pretty much a half-court guy, Evander Kane. He moves okay for a big man, but I'm not necessarily sure he's going to help trigger a transition game here.
I think there was a time where he could.
There was, yeah. And if he does, I think it's going to be more as a finisher, obviously, than a setup guy. He's not a playmaker per se either. But I could see Evander opening up some space for Elias Pettersson. I also think Evander could be a net front presence on a line with Petey. I also think that Elias can, as we know, he's a strong defensive player, can probably compensate for some of Kane's defensive shortcomings. So I could see it. I don't necessarily see it as a most commonly used line, but I'm sure that Adam Foote and staff at some point this season will put Evander Kane on the wing with Elias Pettersson. So that part of it I think could help. I voted yes on the poll question because of that. As for the dressing room, who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
And really, that's who knows on both guys. Like, who knows on Evander, who knows on Elias.
Mm-hmm.
Elias is a bit of a loner. He's been difficult to reach for a lot of people. So I don't necessarily know if the personalities will jive or if they will clash. I don't think anybody knows that at this point. But there's part of me that thinks, could it be any worse than JT Miller? It can't be worse than JT Miller, right? Like, I understand that concern out there in the market amongst fans. I read everything yesterday with people weighing in on the trade. I can understand that because of Kane's history, but we do have to understand that Evander Kane and JT Miller are not the same person. And frankly, if it does become a situation of a personality clash and not getting along, and the room still saying, and the room still being dysfunctional, toxic, whatever big mean adjective you want to use, I mean, at that point, I'm almost as inclined to look at Elias as I am Evander and say, who can he get along? Who can he play with?
Well, Kane, when we say off ice with Kane, it's actually twofold, right? There's two streams there. There's the away from arena issues, and there's the off ice but in arena issues. And I'm pretty confident that that's a different issue than the JT Miller issue. Remember, the JT Miller issue was pointed. It was Miller v. Pettersson. I don't think it's ever going to be Kane v. Pettersson.
No.
It's going to be Kane being Kane.
Kane versus everybody.
Yeah, but not even versus, just Kane in the world and the rest of the world looking back going, really? That's the potential. I'm not saying it'll happen. I'm saying that's the potential.
And fair shout there, Blake, because let's remember the situation with Elias and JT blew up, and there were issues prior to this past season.
Yeah.
JT, a very social, let's get the guys together on the road sort of guy. Elias, more of a loner, not necessarily wanting to join in the group. But it got pointed when JT was upset with the shape that Elias showed up in last year at training camp after everything that Alvine had said in that postseason press conference about, hard work begins now, haven't achieved anything yet. JT took that to heart, and Elias came back to training camp and said his knee tendonitis prevented him from doing all the exercises he would have otherwise done in a summer, which was not a big summer. As for Kane, I did a little digging yesterday with some friends in Edmonton. They did not perceive of any incident or problem with Evander Kane and his Oilers teammates. Now, one person said, look, he is absolutely an individual who marches to his own drumbeat. We have known this for some time with Evander, and in part because he's from here. The NHL demands conformity, and Evander has been reticent to fall in line, like most hockey players do. I also understand the notion and remain skeptical about the Canucks leadership group and how they will deal with Evander Kane, because needless to say, it is a different leadership group than Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in the Oilers room. But I also see that going two ways as well. And it was a big ask of a young captain in Quinn Hughes. Something like that raging, your top two centers hating each other's guts. But at some point, Quinn Hughes has to take that step too, right? Into McDavid Draisaitl territory in terms of a room boss, a Nathan McKinnon room boss.
And he's got help. Like Marcus Pettersson is an Uber veteran that is, he will help be a guide rail as well.
Yeah. And the other thing that I'm pretty sure of, JT Miller's mission was to own the room. I think he recognized that from the moment he got to Vancouver, that this was a room that was there for the taking. Unlike the Tampa room he was in, unlike the Rangers room he was in as a young player. And I think his intentions were good. I just think sometimes the methods were harsh and rubbed some people, including Elias, the wrong way. I don't see Evander walking in here going, okay, I'm going to be a boss in this room. This is going to be my room.
No, I wouldn't think
People are going to follow me, sort of thing.
He's also
I don't think there will be any kind of sort of challenge to the leadership that JT Miller's presence, and it's not necessarily criticism because I think he just comes by it honestly. I think that's just his personality. It's hard for him to change or turn that side off. That JT was to both Horvat and Quinn Hughes.
Well, for more than one reason, he will not come into that room. I think he knows his reputation precedes him. I think he knows he's going to have to be squeaky clean. I think he knows, being in his hometown, that all eyes will be on him. And the other big thing is
blending in here like you would in other NHL markets.
The other thing is his contract status. With 1 year left, there's two things to consider there. He wants to perform very well and appear very hireable for the next season, because it'll probably be close to his last contract, if not his last contract in the National Hockey League. So he wants to make sure that he is hireable in that regard. But secondly, he walks into that room with only 1 year left on his deal. He knows he could be, if he gets that next contract, he could be somewhere else with that next contract next year. And it's not like guys are going to be looking to him as, hey, here's our leader for the next 5 years, Evander Kane. Every guy in that room is going to know that Evander Kane is signed for 1 year and 1 year only. And they don't defer. That's not the natural leadership process of the guy with 1 year left on his deal coming in with 1 year left on his deal, that he's going to be anything close to a leader in that room. So I think that's the good news is he'll know his place. His contract status puts him in a certain place, if not his reputation alone. And for that reason, it's... Again, I don't think this is structured for success per se. That is way too strong a phrase here. But I can see the temptation by the Vancouver Canucks and why they bit on the hook at the very least. Again, my biggest issue from a purely hockey standpoint, and gosh, I hope that's all we have to analyze this in retrospect, is hockey. So let's assume that we're only going to be looking back on this with 2020 hindsight and talking about hockey when this is all said and done. My biggest issue is how they didn't get Edmonton to retain. That is the biggest issue.
So you voted yes on the poll?
Begrudgingly, but I can find a way to say yes.
Yeah. The daily poll question brought to you by the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club, now taking bookings for any time during the 2025 season. Prime times are filling up fast. So get yours locked in, and whether golfing or just visiting Whistler, check out the patio at Palmer's Gallery Bar and Grill. It overlooks the 18th green. It's home of Whistler's best burger, some awesome local beer there as well. If you have a group of 12 or more, tell them about your group, whistlergolf.com/groups.
By the way, just early voting here on the poll question. Close to 50-50.
Yeah, I see that.
Like, you guys are split on this. So
yeah, no, I get it. He's a polarizing player.
Yeah, it wasn't that polarizing. Should the Canucks acquire him, or do you like the deal? That wasn't very polarizing.
It was 3-1, no.
But now that he's here, you got to deal with what is real. And the fact is, he's here.
Yeah.
So, how does it work, right? That's basically what we're asking.
Speaking of what's real, here's our top story today, Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Just my 2 cents on this trade. I wish the Canucks weren't in a position to have to add a 34-year-old coming off injury with a checkered off-ice history, but they're not flush with assets, cap space, or free agent cachet, and these are the sorts of bets they have to make to swim that narrow channel of getting the team back to the playoffs and keeping Quinn Hughes happy and in Canucks colors next season and beyond. This is how I answered the poll question we put out on Evander Kane 5 or so days ago. I understand the worries about culture in the room coming off last year, and I agree that there is risk there. I also feel that Evander has so much to gain in a walk year, playing for his last NHL contract. And I think that's especially meaningful for someone who, and if you know the history, he declared bankruptcy at one point because of his gambling addiction. He does not have that massive NHL nest egg of money to fall back on. So you should get the best of him on and off the ice, a hungry player who wants to be here, wants to do well in his hometown.
He does still live here, too. That's the other thing.
Yeah, he loves Vancouver.
Like, he does not want to, pardon the French here, doesn't want to shit where he eats. You know, like, he wants to make sure that he's leaving this legacy as a Vancouver Canuck, however long this legacy is going to be, in relatively reasonable condition. You would think that is at least where he is on day one here.
Yeah. Well, Blake, I mean, look at how quick he was to go to social media after the tragedy at the Lapu Lapu Festival. He said, I grew up in Sunset. The Filipino community, I grew up with them. Wonderful people. He was devastated. So, yeah, this is a guy who's invested in our city. And again, people have to realize he's not JT Miller. I understand there will be Miller loyalists in that room who might be thinking, you got rid of JT for Elias' sake, then traded for that guy? I get that.
And that's fair criticism,
and it
too.
is totally
that is
fair
criticism.
But they and others have to understand he's a different personality than JT. And they and others, they also have to move on. Like, that's part of adulting. Things go poorly. You have a lot of regrets. You don't agree with a decision that is made in your orbit. You still got to move on and put your best foot forward.
But a different headache is still a headache. You know, like, yeah, it's not JT Miller headache, but it's a different headache.
But everybody should be going in there with a clean slate. And again, the reports in Edmonton, he was well liked by his teammates, and he was out in the community playing his part. Now, imperfect player, not a playmaker or a defensive piece, but big and moves reasonably well for a big man, shoots well, scores goals in the net front area, has snarl. It's the hard skill profile the Canucks don't really have in their forward group. You wish Dakota Josh was a little bit more edgy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, he has to mind his penalties. Of that, there is no doubt. Although I'm not... I heard so much about, all the penalties in the Stanley Cup final. Folks, have we forgotten 2011? When you're playing a Stanley Cup final against the Boston Campbells or the Florida Campbells? No, I honestly do think the refs picked on him in the Stanley Cup final. That super soft cross-check penalty got in the first period of Game 3. You remember? We were coming off those two spectacular games in Game 1 and Game 2. You're going, oh my God, that's why I love the sport. That is amazing entertainment by two exceptional teams. And then the first period of Game 3, refs called fucking everything. It was like 8 minor penalties or something like that. Evander love taps a guy in the net front in a battle, and they call him for cross-checking. I thought it was utter bullshit. And as we know, NHL officials hold grudges, get leaned on.
But that's the thing. You acquired that player now. That reputation doesn't get sloughed off because he's changed jerseys.
He's got to play an honest game. He cannot engage in, because some of it in the Stanley Cup final was his fault. Like the temper tantrums in the third period when the game is lost. Mm-hmm. I mean, that shit can't happen. What I dislike about the deal is what you checked. They assume the entirety of the $5.1 million salary, which handcuffs their ability to add 2 more top 6, top 9 forwards without having to move money out. And they helped a division rival with their cap situation. When we were talking about Evander Kane as a possibility last week, I think we even articulated somewhere between a 5th to 7th pick with some salary retention. Well, it was a 4th, and there was no salary retention. Reportedly, there were 3 teams involved here. So if you have a marketplace and you're the Oilers and Stan Bowman, you can extract more, and they did. I also wonder whether the owner pressed for this move, because the Canucks have inquired about Kane in the past, and I do believe there's a personal relationship there between the parties. But all in all, they didn't subtract from their current roster, so it wasn't robbing Peter to pay Paul, and God knows how many times we have used that sentence this spring. The 4th-round pick isn't likely to come back to haunt you. And the reward of a 25-goal power forward, especially if he can play with Pettersson and get more out of Pettersson, is attractive in what is a highly competitive environment for talent right now, where your counterparts are playing with fuller decks than what you have. I don't love the trade or even like it given the no salary retention, but for a mid, not late, especially, I should say, for a mid, not late draft pick, retaining no salary. But I understand it, and I can support it on hockey logic, given the context of this offseason and the Canucks either existing in desperation or on the precipice of desperation. And look, if things aren't working out for the team on the ice, like you're not a playoff team, you should be able to get something back for Kane, maybe even the 4th-round pick. So maybe it's just a free look wash. If things work out very well with Evander Kane, you have a decision to make on re-signing a player of that age and asking yourself the question, are we going to get the best of him after we commit money in term and he's not playing for a contract? But for me, that's kind of like, that's a nice problem to have. And frankly, if you just think we'll squeeze 1 year out of him and that's that, and even if he performs well, it won't be us paying him in free agency, I'm okay with that too.
said yesterday, I don't really subscribe to, of all the criticisms of which there are many of this deal, you bailed out a division rival. I kind of throw that one out because he was getting dealt. Now, they might have been forced into a situation where they might have been forced into a situation where they retain $1 million with somebody else. But, I don't think it was so different that they would retain 2.5 with somebody else.
Except it's a two-shot swing. It's a birdie bogey situation because you have diminished assets to going out by taking on the salary. Like if they had moved the salary to someone else, you still have the full $13 million or whatever it was.
By their calculus, right? They were losing that money anyway, Edmonton, and we actually think we've got use for this player. So they don't see it. Clearly, people on the outside can say, hey, now you've blocked acquisition of other players. But they see the calculus of, no, but we got the services of this player, and we like the services of this player.
But all in all, you and Jeff were against the trade yesterday.
Yeah, I would not. I don't like the trade as it was constructed.
Okay.
No.
I am mildly for the trade. Mike, you on Team Matt or on Team Blake and J. Patton?
I like it.
Wow.
But it's risky.
Shocking me.
Okay. He gave up nothing.
Mike's a diehard Canucks fan, though. And Mike's a Vancouver guy. So bringing a Vancouver guy home to play for the Canucks when he's got something to prove, when he's hungry, that resonates with Mike. He loved that Evander Kane poll question we did last week.
You know what I needed after hearing about this? A high 10 double AZ IPA.
He went right to the top of the line of the Yellow Dog.
High five?
Suite of offerings.
It's good, really good.
High five. It was a high 10.
I needed the high 10, the double hazy IPA. More flavor, more alcohol.
More alcohol.
More everything.
More. Just give me more. Numb me out here.
A beer made for those who go all in, and I needed to go all in after that one.
He had to run the show, and they traded for Evander Kane. That was a big emotional day in Blake Price's world.
When I'm running the show, because I don't have the wheel a lot, I would just assume a controversial trade like that because the show kind of ran itself.
It's true. And somebody mentioned to me, Matt, you're picking some days to be away here. Yeah.
It wasn't the first time we've had big news on you gone.
No,
You're stepping into the Dave Pratt shoes.
Yeah, no, exactly. I've been star-crossed there. So the Canucks are still hunting that top two center. They're still dangling the 15th overall pick. Elliot Friedman says he does not expect Tomas Hertl or William Karlsson to be traded by the Vegas Golden Knights. So maybe it's just Nick Hague with Vegas, or maybe
that Hertl trade was like right there.
I know. But did Hertl have trade protection? I thought I saw that he had trade protection, so maybe that was he didn't want
what
to
held
Carolina.
It up. Yeah. Gotta think you can if you.
So maybe it's just Hague in Vegas, or maybe they know they're out on Marner, and so don't have to set aside. Huge.
Gotta believe you could sway William Karlsson. 10-team no trade.
Yeah. So are we into late circle back on Pius Suter or Brock Besser territory?
Well, basically on some of the reporting that I've been reading, the Besser ship has sailed. I think Suter's a possibility.
Yeah.
I think this doubling back on Suter is a possibility. I've got a. And I'm really trusting my spidey sense because I had spidey senses on Kane. I've got a strange feeling that J.G. Pageau is a Vancouver Canuck.
He has been emboldened. His spidey sense gets one thing right, and now he's riding spidey sense.
It's like a hockey Ouija board, right? And it's landing on J.G. Pageau.
Help me out. I heard most of Alvine yesterday. I may have missed it. Was he asked about Hedl at all and Hedl's health?
I didn't hear anything on that. No.
I was wondering whether he'd be asked about that because that's kind of a key piece here. And of course, Patrick is not a great liar, and so if he equivocates, you sit there and you go, "Oh no, they may have to,"
But Matt, it's a key piece.
A world without Hedl.
It's a key piece as the bottom bar, as where the floor is on what the lineup could look like. But I could be told that Philip Hedl is running marathons and in jiu-jitsu competitions in A-OK right now, and it still would want me to get a second-line center if I'm the Vancouver Canucks. Like,
I agree, but there were the reports earlier this week, last week. No, Drance, last week. They are
wrapping their heads around
resigning
it.
themselves to the yeah.
Yeah.
So
can't be. It cannot be.
As regular audience members, no, I've been a big proponent of Pius Suter. I would like to see him back. There's even a world where I would pay Pius Suter $5 million a year if he works with me on term and trade protection. And this is one of the reasons why. This is one of the reasons why I'm hedging on the Kane deal. Understand why they made it. Think it could work out. Need to take those types of swings, but the salary tension being the big thing for me, even if it's not the big thing for Blake. So let's say you get Suter back. Let's say you circle back on Suter, and you get him back, and let's just use the number $4.5 million, Blake, just because that's ballpark. That does not leave you enough cap space to add a top 6 forward. Maybe it gets you another top 9 forward, and we'll hear from Alvine here. I thought it was interesting how he characterized Evander Kane yesterday. So, like, even $1.5 million to $2 million, I think, would have been the magic number that gets you into top 6 forward territory, even with a re-signing of Suter.
$1.5 million of retention.
Retention, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's why retention was huge.
Yeah. So,
No,
now,
what I didn't have a
now
problem
I think you have to move money out to be able to land the 2 more forwards, especially a top 6 guy.
No, you mistook what I was saying.
I didn't hear your mouth.
No, the retention is the key problem for me in the trade. It's the key problem for me.
Oh, you just don't like the phrase took Edmonton off the hook.
Right, because he was going somewhere else. They were getting off the hook with somebody. That's what I didn't like.
If the reports are to be believed, yes.
We should get to this.
The super chat?
Yes.
Just give me a second.
Okay.
I heard and saw all the commentary about Kane as Besser replacement. I agree with everyone who said Besser right now is a better goal scorer than Evander Kane. I agree with all the commentary about, Besser being less of an age durability risk next season, not to mention
you get 5 years of Besser before you reach Kane's age.
No, but and I saw Cam Robinson's clip and I saw it blow up and people, Cam is
taking on all comers.
Yeah,
yes.
And created quite a debate point there, and I get it. But let's understand, this is not apples to apples.
No,
this is apples to eggs. I mean, if you're evaluating a world of Evander Kane versus Brock Besser, understand Brock Besser is costing you 6 to 8 years. You're making a 6 to 8 year commitment if you're signing Brock Besser at far more money than $5.1 million. So, yeah, Brock has a ton of fans here in town. We've watched him grow up. We've watched him go through his family travails. We feel a kinship with him. He has been very generous in terms of sharing himself and his life with this market. It is going to be quite sad to see him go on July 1st, and I do think he will go on July 1st. And I understand that is a jarring juxtaposition to Evander Kane and everything that he represents. But it was not a pure hockey comparison of one or the other.
Well, no, they're different situations. So, yes, it is a hard comparison to make, but let's be clear, too. If you sign Brock Besser to an 8x7, $8 million cap hit for over 7 years, that $8 million in a percentage of the cap becomes 5.1 today in 3 years' time. So
fair, but then you still have many more years with Brock, and if he's not aging well, that's not going to be a great contract. I mean, we talked about it all spring, Blake. Would you bet that many years on a guy who's slow by NHL standards right now?
No.
And with an injury history? No, of course not.
If I had my druthers and I'm the Vancouver Canucks, I do not make the Kane trade. I do not sign Brock Besser. I think both of those are risky.
Blake's world, they trade for Jean-Gabriel
No,
Pageau.
that was not a hope. No. Let's differentiate again. I was not hoping.
We're doing a lot of quibbling today. Oh my God,
Well,
Mike! Like we're threading. How many needles are we threading here today?
Matt, I
No, it's not this. It's this.
I was sure on Evander Kane that they were going to get him.
Yeah, no,
I wasn't asking for Evander Kane, and it's the same thing with JG Pageau. I don't want them to get a JG Pageau. I'm more fearful of it more than anything else. Okay, let's get to Matt. You guys are right. Kane this is a super chat with partial proceeds going to the BC Mental Health Foundation. You guys are right. Kane is not Miller. Different personalities, aims, and flaws will lead to different dynamics in the room and opportunity for Quinn. Thank you for the +1 there.
Yeah, and Matt. I don't. I just don't think we should prejudge matters and think that Evander Kane is going to show up and immediately be a problem on. In the room and off the ice. And Alvine he'll speak to the media later today. We'll get our first window into that. And Patrik Allvin spoke to the media yesterday, saying that Kane's past is in the past, that he's matured now with 3 children, that the reviews off the ice in Edmonton were sound, that they did their due diligence. He said Kane wanted to be here, should be motivated in the final year of his contract in his hometown, and after playing in high-stakes games with 2 consecutive runs to the Stanley Cup final as a member of the Edmonton Oilers. And then he was asked why Evander Kane makes sense. Here's Alvine.
I think every team is looking to be harder to play against, and for us, with the group we have here, when a player like this comes available to the cost, we felt we have a chance to upgrade our top 9, a mid-6, and become a harder team to play against. Obviously, Evander, the way his contract was structured, he had a preferred 15 teams to go to, and Vancouver was his preferred destination.
Interesting that he characterized him as a top 9 or mid-6 player. And I think twofolds there. I think number one, he avoided the pitfall of, he's the first line wing. He's going to be a top 6 first line wing, because then people are going to connect the dots to Elias Pettersson, and is he part of the solution here? And number two, he's lowering the expectation a little bit as well. Plus, I just think it's honest. Like, frankly, I wouldn't expect Evander Kane to hang on a top line all of next year. And I think the bottom is, that he's going to have to be in transition to more of a third line role. Plus, he's hunting a top 2 center, and in a perfect world, another top 6 forward after that. So I thought it was an insightful answer, despite not a ton of word salad there from Alvine. And
pretty expensive third line winger.
That's it. Yep.
If you're resigning yourself that this guy might be a third line winger for
said
us,
mid-6, top 9, so he couched it.
But that's inclusive of the third line.
Yeah, but if it's a second line, it's...
Well, you would hope it's the second line. That's the thing. That tracks. You would hope he's a second line winger.
Sure.
But right from the get-go, they're like, might be a third line winger for us. Really? You're bailing out your division foe?
Wait a second. Someone just told me that they're not bailing out
my words,
Edmonton,
theirs.
because Edmonton was going to trade the salary anyways.
Not my words, theirs.
God, I missed you.
Just saying.
And I was so pleased to hear this. We had to tell Mike the story earlier today of Sekerson Price in the building during Tracksuit Gate at Rogers Arena all those years ago, where Evander arrives in a tracksuit, not a suit, and finds the tracksuit in the shower soaking wet because his teammates did not approve of the breach of dress code. We told Mike about how we did a show that day about where Blake and I were aligned and against something in hockey culture, that it doesn't fucking matter what you wear to the rink. It's how you play when you're in uniform. And so many people didn't seem to get that back then. There were a lot of Don Cherry acolytes telling us how wrong we were. Look at Grapes. He's always in the sharp suit. He's always pointing out all the guys who are wearing the sharp suits on their way into the rink. Blake and I tried to make the point, well, if everybody's wearing a sharp suit, can it be really a competitive? The suit is hanging up in the dressing room stall when the game is going on. The suit has sweet nothing to do with the way a player performs on the ice.
It's really ironic, too, that we're talking about this on the day that, and we're going to get into the CBA.
With the dress code.
The dress code is now officially off the table. Not allowed to have a dress code.
Dress code, yeah.
Did you know that Don Cherry retired yesterday, too?
I heard it. Yeah, he signed
His
off
last
his podcast at 91 years old. Yeah.
Before we leave the poll question entirely here.
I was going to play the Alvine clip, but
yeah.
you go ahead.
On what, though?
Well, he doesn't care what a player wears.
Oh, okay, sure. Go ahead.
So here's Alvine, who was asked about Evander driving fancy cars like Rolls Royces to the rink, and of course the tracksuit of years past. Here's PA.
We all know that there has been some stuff in the past, but again, I have no problem with personalities. As long as they perform on the ice and fit in with the team rules off the ice, I have no issues or concern with players or what they're wearing and how they're driving to the games.
Incidentally, who's the flashiest? Kane will now take over top spot for, predictably the fashion. But Pettersson would be there, wouldn't he? He's actually pretty fashion forward.
Yeah, but it's funny. I found myself last year, I was going stoplight to stoplight with Elias on Pacific. He was leaving the rink, and I just happened to be driving by. It was not a flashy car in the least.
No. But wardrobe-wise, he's pretty fashion forward.
Okay. Does wardrobe outweigh car when we're talking about flash?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
You're allowed to have a flashy car
I
more than you're allowed
edified
flashy
on that.
wardrobe.
Okay. All right. Then, yeah, although I think even Elias has dialed it back since, the online social criticism that he apparently can't resist reading.
But as per
anyways,
as per the poll question, though, and whether or not Kane can bump Pettersson, parts of this interview have been already leaked or released, pardon me. This Leo Carlson, Elias Pettersson sit down.
I saw that, yeah.
Leo Carlson is asked, how many points do you think Elias is going to get next season? Mm-hmm. Pettersson jumps in, just say more than last year. To which Carlson says, I think he can get to 92 points next season.
Leo, put a target on him.
And then they say, would you be happy with that, Elias? Elias says, yeah, absolutely. Leo says, I think you can hit 100, actually. Somewhere between 92 and 105.
Oh, my goodness. We got to get Leo Carlson.
This is all pre-Evander Kane.
Yes.
We'd love Leo to update us on the
Yeah,
numbers.
exactly. But I thought it was a good answer by Alvine. I don't care what they wear or what they drive to the rink, so long as they're, and I don't even care if they have different personalities, so long as they're just a fit in the room. It's all that matters.
No, that is all that matters.
Treat your coworkers well, collaborate effectively with them. It's not hard. They made it look hard last year.
They made everything look hard last year.
They did.
And
you know what? Let me just modify. When you have that many people, I say it's not hard. I suppose it's not easy to get along with everyone at all times, especially with the amount of time that you're spending together. Especially when you're probably walking around in some degree of pain at some point in the season because of injuries, ailments, knocks. Especially when you got mom and the kids at home wondering where's dad, when's dad getting home on the third day of a 13-day, 6-game roadie. So I get it. They have annoyances, nuisances like the rest of us in terms of their day-to-day life. But yes, they made it look way more difficult than it needs to be last year.
The good news is, and there's no taking back that they made things look so difficult last year. They had 90 points last year.
Yeah.
It
wasn't like a...
Like this was not... We've seen 76
right.
point seasons
we
recently.
know what those seasons look like, and this was not
This was not that. They were a tire fire that somehow was able to get across the finish line with 90 points. Incredible, actually.
Darren Dreger told us yesterday that Demko is off the market and he expects an extension. Alvine spoke on that too in the context of Artur Silovs, because Silovs said earlier this week he's hoped he has left the AHL behind for good. The quote was, finishing a point in your career. Mm-hmm. He talked about his AHL
Springboard.
participation.
Using this as a springboard.
Yeah, which was a pretty, bold, some might say expectant, rushing his fences.
We called it polite, though. He did it in a polite way.
He did, but, and second language, so you want to give him a little wiggle room here. But I think the sentiment was clear that, he thinks he's an NHL goalie now and doesn't need to play in the AHL anymore. And Alvine was asked about his goaltending situation with Demko, presumably healthy, and Silovs coming off this Calder Cup MVP run, joining Kevin Lankinen. Here's what Alvine said.
It was a hell of a performance. I'm happy for Artie. We know that he's a really good goalie, and this is just justifying that. That being said, we still got a couple of good goalies in the system there with Tolopilo and Ty Young that are more than ready to play as well. So we'll see here over the next couple of days and where things goes here with Thatcher, and we make decisions after that.
So first of all, name-checking Tolopilo and Ty Young as early in the answer as he did.
And we've seen this in other organizations where you've got a decent goaltending prospect there, but the graduation of your guy doesn't coincide properly with their ascension.
Right.
And that ultimately Silovs here is that they've got two guys now, two veterans under contract. You would think that it just doesn't work for Silovs to graduate here as a Vancouver Canuck.
Right. Tolopilo and Young, quote, more than ready to play. I mean, at the AHL.
No, that's what he meant. That's what he meant.
But I do wonder whether he clued us that Silovs is the goalie they are looking to move now.
David Pinota on that acknowledges that the contract talks are there between the Canucks and Demko, as did Dreger.
Yeah.
He says it's still early to predict what direction it goes, and there remains outside interest. If they can't get a deal, they'll further explore the market. If they can, Artur Silovs may get moved. So Pinota not as convinced as Dreger is that it's a more imminent deal here between the Canucks and Demko. Still a possibility.
And we did see a goaltender trade today that might inform our view on what Artur's is worth, because the Florida Panthers have acquired it's Danil Tarasov.
Yes.
Columbus goaltender. Bill Zito knew him from his time with the Blue Jackets for a 5th-round pick. Now, Tarasov did not lead his team to a Calder Cup championship and win MVP.
But last year, not this past season, but the year previous, 23-24, he had a .908 save percentage in 20-odd games for CBJ.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
They were going through goaltender hell as they continue, and they won off of Elvis Merzlikins, but that's a very difficult contract to trade. Utah gets winger J.J. Peterka from Buffalo for defenseman Michael Kesselring and Shane Doan's son, Josh. Not a huge price. In fact, somewhat shocked that that's all J.J. Peterka got. I mean, we had talked a little bit about Peterka to the Canucks, but just thought the price would be so exponential in terms of trade return that he was likely out of their league.
Well, you expected something elite or potentially elite going the other way,
Right.
and neither one of these players will be potentially elite.
Now, Kesselring is a low-cost second-pair right-shot defenseman
Really
who can
nice
move
player.
the puck. So that's a good player at a great number. He was a bit of a late bloomer in his career. He hasn't played a ton of NHL games, really just 2 full seasons. And so the salary is quite low for Kesselring right now, and I imagine that was attractive to Buffalo, on top of the fact they were looking for a right-shot D. And Doan's a young player, too, who has done pretty well. I mean, then Arizona Coyotes were sort of accused of just nepotism in taking Doan as early as they did because his dad's a club legend in the 2nd round. But he's made it to the NHL and looks like he's going to be effective player. But you're right, they did not get elite back. And then Michael Russo in Minnesota reporting the Wild offered Rossi as the starting point in a package for Peterka.
And
We're
rebuffed.
willing to include other roster players and or prospects and picks. And Buffalo chose this deal.
Which is not good news on a bunch of fronts for Bill Guerin, is that, like that seems like a very fair deal. In fact, everybody
Buffalo chose Michael Kesselring, who, at his best might get you 40, 45 points for a guy who's already been at 60.
Yeah, like everybody was
he's
connecting
younger.
those dots. Why don't Rossi for Peterka? Well, apparently Buffalo doesn't think that much of Rossi.
Like a lot of other teams, apparently. And so is Guerin going to have to settle for futures or mostly futures in a Rossi trade?
Or does he sign him?
Urgent situation? Well, yeah. And he made the point now he wants points back, be it a center or a winger.
Yeah.
That winger part is new. It was the center before. Now he's messaging winger. So he's already come off the ask a little bit.
And points for points. Somebody,
Right. And that dovetails with what Columbus President Don Waddell said today. Right now, there seems to be a shortage of players because everybody wants players for players. It's been a different year for, I got to be honest with you, all my years that I've been doing it. And Waddell's been doing this a long time in Atlanta, Carolina, and now Columbus.
And then Guerin came out and said this same thing.
Yeah.
This is a crazy market. I've never seen anything like it. And everybody's saying that as well, which is kind of funny.
We talked about it. There are no pure sellers. Yeah, there are tons of trade partners who are willing to offer you prospects and picks. There are very few trade partners who want to offer you roster players for roster players. We talked about this could be a summer of hockey trades because they have no choice. You would think, all washing cap space, people can add. But there are so few teams willing to be bad next year, even in a Gavin McKenna draft, that it's this really unique environment where the competition for players for talent is as fierce as it has ever been. You have more teams involved in right now help players than perhaps we've ever seen.
The question for me, this feels like a
helps
standoff.
Explain the Kane trade.
This feels like a standoff in a lot of cases, and I wonder the intestinal fortitude of teams. Are they going to remain in the standoff, or do they start to cave and do prices come down because they just need to make those deals?
Yep.
A la Bill Guerin.
Well,
Buffalo,
I think
Kevin Adams.
Guerin on the and there's no floor. I keep using that phrase. It's not a centralized draft anymore. But I think Guerin tomorrow, once the Islanders are on the clock, if he doesn't have a Rossi deal done by that point, I think things get very interesting for Guerin and Rossi and Minnesota. And I think it becomes far more real for the Vancouver Canucks if that dynamic takes place. News in Dallas, where Victoria's Jamie Benn re-signs on a one-way deal, and where Darren Dreger reports their coaching decision is down to Glenn Gulletson, the former Canucks assistant, former head coach in the NHL, Calgary. Was he the head coach in Dallas once too, Glenn? As an interim?
Yeah.
You want to look?
Yeah.
Or their farm coach, Neil Graham. Dollywall had been musing that the Stars would ask the Canucks permission to speak to Manny Malhotra. But if they're down to Gulletson and Graham,
2 years.
Yeah. We shall see. And look, we're not going to get into the nitty-gritties on this on today's show. We'll do so more as the summer goes along. But anticipating a new collective agreement between the NHL and the players tomorrow. 84-game seasons are coming your way, folks, with just 4 preseason games and veterans playing no more than 2 preseason games. If you're a season ticket holder, that's probably pretty good for you. You're getting real games as opposed to fake games.
Yeah, it's not more games. It's more consequential games. And it's not even more games for the players to play because we were down to the veterans playing 3 preseason games anyway.
Yep.
3-4. So this is not a bad decision, actually.
A couple of dynamics helped get us here. Number one, season ticket members, letting their position be known about paying full ticket for preseason hockey, and especially the lineups that get dressed. But also these flyaway preseason games off-campus preseason games, because what that did was reduce the number of home games, which reduced the price for the season ticket member, and there was no putting that genie back in the bottle, right? Like you weren't coming back to the season ticket holders and saying, guess what? We got 4 preseason home games this year after doing 3 because you did one in Victoria or wherever you did one. 7 years max for contract extensions with your own free agents to be 6 years for new teams on the open market. There's a playoff cap mechanism coming in to address LTIR, long overdue, well done. No more deferred salary like we saw with Carolina this past summer. Signing bonuses are going to be capped, so that's going to make contracts a little more difficult to buy out, because buyouts were calculated on salary without signing bonus, and now there's going to be more salary. Permanent e-bugs, which kind of takes away a charming local story, but I also get it. It's not the most professional look, and
I still don't know what that means.
What it means is, from a practice point of view, instead of putting the assistant equipment manager or trainer in the gear, as we used to see with the Canucks and other teams, you actually have somebody who is accustomed to being a goalie at a certain level with you at all times to be able.
But I think most people have moved off of like the questionable. Like mostly they're college goalies. Like here, it's
no, I understand that, but
Dolly's son. For
this
God's
is
sakes,
going to be an in-house guy, so he's going to travel with you. He's going to practice with you.
That's going to be his job. Is that how you understand that?
That's how I understand it. Is that it's going to be a permanent third goalie with every team. I do not believe that they are going to have to be cap compliant on these goalies, but I stand to be corrected on that.
The way I read
it's
it,
kind of like if you know Formula One, like they have a reserve driver.
Yeah.
So you have your 2 drivers, and then you have a driver who, in a lot of cases, has raced Formula One or has raced a lot of the higher circuits and is just, behind glass break in case of emergency.
It previously has been a volunteer position, and they've had a roster of players. Mm-hmm. I think the way I read it was, now you can pay the guy, and it'll be you don't have a roster, you have a guy.
Yeah, that's right. You have a guy.
But I don't think it changes the caliber. Like I think it's still going to be probably a local collegiate goalie, I would think.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to be a little higher up the pecking order.
Yeah, a pro.
Yeah, like
maybe.
A guy who's played AHL, ECHL, that sort of thing.
Maybe. Yeah.
And a World Cup of Hockey is coming in 2028, and they're taking bids from cities. Are we a potential host city? The Rogers Arena and the Pacific Coliseum, right? Which will be home to the new PWHL franchise.
Well, there'll be different cities for semifinal and final, quarterfinals, and then round robin. So what I'm wondering, and it's always Eastern Seaboard, and I get it, there's a lot of population, but it'd be fun to do a purely Pacific time zone one too.
Yeah, it would. I think you'd have to start the games in the late afternoon for the sake of the television audience, right?
But for a World Cup of Hockey best on best, that's okay, I think.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say, this city hosts to the most famous
that's right.
international game on North American soil. As much as I love the gold medal game in Salt Lake City, it never got any bigger on North American ice than Canada, USA, and Vancouver in the gold medal game 2010.
Well, the other thing,
all due respect to the Summit Series, the Summit Series came to its crescendo in Moscow, of course.
The other thing I thought of, where you could either have us doing round robin games or the final, and then would they be tempted to put the other temptation for the final? LA or Vegas.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, I could see something like that.
And then everybody's just traveling up and down the same time zone.
Right.
Easy.
And you're going to great cities.
Yeah. And it's a mid-season tournament again, right? It's not a preseason tournament now. It'll be like the Four Nations face-off. It'll be a mid-season tournament.
It's quite a break, too.
And what that means is you get full buy-in from the players because guess what? They get to feel the sunlight on their skin.
Right.
And we know they love that.
Right. And they're in shape and ready to, in hockey mode. Let's Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta. Greta, a fantastic spot to catch all the games home and away, to pregame to postgame. You are mere steps from the arena or stadium. But it is an even better spot for your summer party. If you are planning a team-building event, a summer sociable, an activity for out-of-towners, check out Greta, the great street food menu, unpretentious. The tacos are amazing. Plus the arcade that surrounds the bar with a game for everyone, whether it's the participatory ice hockey or air hockey pop-a-shot, or whether it's just getting in a console, driving a fast car, jumping around and trying to save that princess. Or just jumping around across the road without getting hit by the car. Greta, 50 West Cordova, let the games begin. Patrick Johnston of the Province and Postmedia. And got to say, a very cool, calm, collected hit with Patrick this week. No voices were raised. And then Jeff Marek, who, as you know, will be doing his own draft show tomorrow on The Sheet. If you're looking for the NHL at-large perspective, will be on shortly after the draft begins. So if there's a big move during the day by the Vancouver Canucks, we will do the emergency pod. When I say shortly after the draft begins, we don't feel compelled to be right there at 4 p.m. for the kickoff to the broadcast and Gary Bettman's opening remarks about how great a market Los Angeles is, and thank you to Phil Anschutz and everybody with the Kings for hosting this. We will, however, be in coverage and doing the show live when the Islanders step to the podium, and thank everybody back at the watch party on the Long Island Expressway Mini Mall, because you know there will be a restaurant sponsor.
Yep.
Maybe it's Chili's, maybe it's Applebee's, maybe it's an indigenous Long Island restaurant. We will shepherd you through that, right up, of course, to and including the Vancouver Canucks draft pick, Cam Robinson and Jeff Patterson going to join us on the program tomorrow. Cam is at the draft in L.A., as you heard yesterday. So we got PJ and Marek coming up here on the program, talk some Caps later in the show after quite a result. A lot of goals at BC Place last night.
A lot of goals.
And the Lions into Regina this weekend to face the Riders. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. Did you win your bet yesterday? Did you pick a...
I did a future of the final score being 3-0 Canada. Well, that was 2 days ago. Mm-hmm. And then it was a Kubas assist. I don't think I got it.
So I told you I'm going to be taking some big swings on NHL draft props. Radim Mertka, the 6'6" right shot Seattle Thunderbird defenseman. I believe there's a world where he's going to get drafted way higher than some of the public lists have him. And I think that because 6'6" right shot defensemen don't grow on trees. I think that because of all the pterodactyls that made their way to the podium last year when size and length were clearly priorities for NHL drafting clubs. Nobody thought Bennett Seneca would be a top 3 pick. Anaheim said, yeah, that's our guy, 6'3", 6'4", big, long scoring forward. I also think that because while this is a appealing group of draft forwards, outside of Michael Misa, I'm not sure there's the elite skill. And I do wonder whether some of these teams are more inclined to take the first pair giant defensemen over those forwards. And because Utah picks at number 4 with a history of taking big guys, and Barry Trotz and Nashville pick at number 5, and God knows they have drafted defensemen over the years. It's an organizational mantra going back to the David Poyles days. So Mertka, and it's terrible. The odds have dropped here, Blake. I was looking at this early in the week. Mertka to go 5th overall is plus 3,500, and to go 4th overall plus 7,500. I'll be on both of those.
Okay. I'm looking ahead to Canada and Guatemala at the Gold Cup. And I have found the result with both teams to score, not a parlay, it's the combo, if you will. Mm-hmm. Canada in a shutout win. So Canada wins, but both teams don't score. So that means a shutout win of some sort for Canada. I still get plus 100.
The segment presented by Bet365. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game. Use code NATION when downloading that app. Getting in on the game. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Patrick Johnston coming up next. Sakaris, Price, Wall Center. It's historic.
That's us.
And on Canada Day, Tuesday, July 1st, the Daily Faceoff Live will be chronicling history. All the free agent signings with the big league-wide scope. It begins at 8 a.m. Pacific time on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. Join host Tyler Yaremchuk, all his analysts, including Jeff Merrick. We have the show today. Colby Cohen, Johnny Lazarus, Carter Hutton, Matthew Barnaby, Hart Levine from Puckpedia will be there to source all the contractual information. Join them at 8 a.m. We'll be kicking off a little later that day. Canucks Focus, the Daily Faceoff, a live free agency special brought to you by the Nation Network. Patrick Johnston will be busy that day as well, covering the Vancouver Canucks for the province. He chronicles history too, and will be doing so tomorrow with the NHL Draft's first round. How are you?
It's all history, Matt. It's all
That's what we do. First draft of history, right?
Yes, and some for better or worse.
Right.
That was a nervous giggle. That was a nervous giggle about this.
Oh, these
wanna
Vancouver
start-
Canucks.
I want to start with an apology because, sometimes we get heated in this segment, and the one thing I love about Patrick is he loves to roll with the punches and throw some back. So we had a good row last week on tax-free jurisdictions, LTO.
Oh, yeah.
I had a regular list to say, "Ooh, you really went at Patrick," and so that's sort of my cue to go, "Okay, maybe."
Oh, really? That was fine.
Yeah. Okay.
It's fine. But I'll just say it again. My buddy James from the Pucknuts, he's a huge fan of that segment. It's his main item, and he was very pleased to hear us discussing all his research.
Oh, good. And of course, you're always harder on the people you're closest with, right? And
yes.
so what it speaks to is that we're a big
It's
happy family here.
Yeah.
Safe space, Patrick. Love it.
To be clear, to dedicated listeners out there, I was not offended by anything Matt said. That is how it works. This is what we do.
Sometimes, I get fiery. I mean, not
You? No.
yeah.
Enough of us. Let's move on to the fire that was acquired by
Evander.
the Vancouver Canucks, because he does have a lot of fire amongst a bunch of other things. That's one of the bags he carries. What do you think of this acquisition for Vancouver?
Well, I mean, there's, obviously, in the end, you have to dress a hockey lineup. And, Matthew brought this one up. Was it last week?
We're going to clip that. We're going to clip that. Patrick Johnston says they have to dress a lineup. Glowing
It's good
praise.
intel.
Glowing
That's
praise.
why they
And
come to
listen,
Patrick
Matthew
Johnston.
pointed out, the guy, scored 20 whatever goals last year. As someone said to me, "What did you think of his season this year?" I said, "Well, he didn't play." I said, "Well, exactly."
Yeah.
He was
No.
listen, he can still. It is clear he can still put the puck in the net, and that does matter to a degree. But as I said last week, there's enough for me about how he just didn't have the wheels to play in a top role with the Oilers. When Hyman went out, they had to lean on Kane, and that was a problem. And he took penalty after penalty. and we know this is a guy that has always done things his own way, is the kind way to put it, but has gotten into a lot of trouble over the years, is the true way to put it. And there's a lot of reasons why he has been a questionable figure for teams to add. You go back, it was amazing doing all the research, going through. As Lachlan Irvine put it to a bunch of us, this is a player that has an entire Wikipedia section titled "Legal Issues and Controversies," right? Like let us not forget that the tracksuit in the shower happened here because he went home to get his car, and he was in his tracksuit because he thought the meeting was at the hotel. He was a young man. Young men made poor choices, but he went to Buffalo and made further poor choices, and had a settled lawsuit against a young woman who alleged he assaulted her. And, there was,
the COVID stuff.
He missed, guys,
Oh, yeah, lots.
he missed a practice to attend the NBA All-Star game.
Yes.
The COVID stuff, listen, I am, as Patrik Allvin said, I am perfectly prepared to give people second chances and believe they can grow up. And the fact that he seems to be a doting father is to his credit, and I think does matter. But nonetheless, there has been all this chaos around him his entire career.
A lot of noise.
Poor choices. So, listen, he's going to is he probably going to put the puck in the net? Yes, he probably is going to put the puck in the net. But there's just, it comes back to that, we know the Canucks are going to struggle to acquire players this summer. You talk to people around the league, and this is far from a choice destination now. It's not just that you're twisting people's arm. People don't want to come here. And so you're having to trade for guys. And if this is the guys that are available for trade, here you are. So, listen, I hope I'm wrong. I always hope I'm wrong when I'm negative. This turns out to be a grand slam, great signing, great pickup, I should say. Mm-hmm. Just there's not a lot of evidence it will be.
He's clearly a nonconformist, and the NHL and its requirement for conformity. He's playing for a final NHL contract at 34 years old in his hometown. I think he's got a lot of motivation to bring his best on and off the ice. But after the answer you just gave, does this smack of desperation? Are the Canucks desperate?
Yeah. I really, this is like I said, they have to put a lineup together. They have to find guys that can play, and there's elements of what else are we going to find? They lose out on Matt Duchene, and we know that they were very keen on that. They're obviously still interested in Marco Rossi, but if that was a trade that Minnesota wanted to make, that would have been made, right? Whatever the Canucks have offered, it would have been made by now, right?
I don't necessarily agree because I think, and Russo reported again today, I think Guerin is holding out.
Sure.
For a roster player, he said today goal, so either center or wing, so it's already moved a little bit, right? Yeah. Winger now is. But I think there might be a world where at the end of the day, Bill Guerin has to settle for feet.
Yeah, it's possible.
And I wonder if the Canucks are waiting him out.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. It's entirely possible.
Also, Bill Guerin's also getting really bad reviews on the player in that they offered, new reporting now is also saying they offered Rossi for Peterka as the start of a package from Minnesota. Right. And Buffalo said no to that. Right. So Buffalo's saying no.
Yes. Yeah.
Our winger for your center, no.
And it's not like Peterka went for exorbitant cost either.
No,
right.
That was interesting.
So the more recent evidence.
That was definitely interesting, for sure. I don't. The Canucks are in a spot and much of their own creation, right? The moment that the things blew up, and I don't know I don't think this was their fault, but the moment things blew up with JT Miller, they were taken on a course they did not plan to be on, right? And so since then they've been forced to pivot, and they've not done very well at that. They continue to need a replacement for JT Miller, or to fill the minutes anyway. They're not going to find the player, but to fill the minutes. The Kane sort of physical element clearly is an attempt to recreate some of that what Miller brought to the plate. But Miller, Miller took faceoffs and played center and was a great passer, and wasn't necessarily always the best defensive player, but like he brought energy and passion, and he was a very underrated skater, I always thought, right? Like replacing that was going to be difficult to begin with. So Kane, there's a physical element, a put the puck in the net element, but it also, I found myself thinking a lot about when the Benning era, when they brought in Michael Furland. Like it was a little bit of a trying to recapture some past glory with a guy that probably wasn't going to be able to do it. You knew right out of the box, and
at least with less term here in this.
Yeah,
case.
I mean, there's way less risk here, obviously, in terms of that. But yeah, like they need to find that. They need to find guys, and they would like to find guys that they actually like are keen on. And I mean, Edmonton had to get rid of a player, and they said, "Well, sure, we'll do that. We'll help you out." And essentially, it's a Podkolzin for Kane trade. And I think a lot about that. I mean, how would you feel last fall if this had been a Podkolzin for Kane trade? And I would have been, well, I understand why they're moving on from Vasily Podkolzin. Is Evander Kane the bet I'm going to make? I'm not really sure. I'm in those terms, I remain ambivalent. I don't hate it, but I'm still have all the things that come with him and all the questions that come with him. And, if he has settled down and focused on hockey, great. That'll be to the Canucks' benefit. It's hard to imagine after all these years of all this stuff that he is a tiger with new stripes.
Let me ask you a question we haven't asked. We haven't even brooded on ourselves lately. And we asked it a lot at the time, but now with the hindsight of the last few months, is the Canuck roster in better shape right now if at the end of January they had traded Elias Pettersson instead of JT Miller? The return that they would have got in January, are they in better shape right now, looking to plug fewer holes to plug, more certainty, do you think? What do you think?
Well, I mean, does Pettersson bring you back a defenseman like Marcus Pettersson? Like, I guess that's one of your questions, right? Like, what is he actually,
for sure.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes.
I think,
and a better center than Hill than Hedl.
So much of your question, though, Blake, is so much of your question pivots on the health of Philip Hedl, though. Because there's a world where you could consider Hedl a zero right now because of murky.
But we knew Hedl's reputation when he was acquired.
No, I understand, but he suffered another concussion as a Canuck, which dramatically.
It's tough because at least even though Pettersson was a complete non-entity on offense, he still was a decent defensive player, right? Miller was putting points up, but he was a disaster defensively. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's two sides of the coin. Like, it's just one way or another. They had to dig them.
Maybe nominal difference is the answer. It's a nominal difference.
But I think fundamentally your problem remains the same, which is that you constructed your team to function one way. It ceased to function because both those parts were not playing well, were not working the way they were intended to work, and one of them had to leave. And they've been trying to dig themselves out of that ever since, and they have not done very well. I mean, it's still shocking to me that even though they did not have the sort of multi-layered structure that they were hoping to have in moving off Besser and turning around and whatever first-round pick they got out of such a Besser trade, turning around and turning into something else. The fact that there was something on the table that they still said no, even at that late moment, and they're just simply going to let him walk. Like, it's so strange to me in the end. Mm-hmm. And so they're having to do extra work because of that. Like, that they have not done a good job under pressure. And yeah, I mean, they are going to have to keep working hard. I mean, Patrik Allvin admitted, I'm probably going to look to move my trade back. He did admit that, right? Of course he has to, because they need a center. But I don't know if it's going to do it. I just don't know if it's going to happen.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. They're going to continue to have to work hard. Did anybody see that Stephen A. Bob Myers exchange at the NBA draft last night, where the ex-GM Bob Myers was explaining how hard it is to do some of the things around the draft with trades and whatnot, and Stephen A. just looked at him and down. Of course it's hard. It's supposed to be hard. People don't want to hear that it's hard. That's the job. Like, there's 30 of these in the world. You're good enough to rise to one of them. Then you've got to be good at dealing with hard. Embrace
what did you
the
think
hard.
this was going to be? What exactly did you think this? Yeah.
Solve the hard. That is what the job is.
That's the biggest problem is that you see other GMs doing the job. That's the problem.
Exactly.
Right.
So let me ask you the Whistler Golf Club poll question before we get off of Evander Kane. Do you see Evander Kane helping Elias Pettersson's bounce back?
I knew this question was coming, and I didn't. I've been thinking about this question since it happened. Is there a fit between Elias Pettersson?
Can you make that argument? Yeah.
No, because I think Pettersson needs a guy on his wing who is fast, and he is not fast. I think this is.
He's not slow though.
I don't think he's as.
And
Listen,
Pettersson's not fast.
The J Fresh Hockey Card has him at a 67% skating speed. That's in the Blues. That's not the Reds, which is the
okay. But I mean, this is a guy though. But let's be clear.
He's 34 and big,
34,
Patrick. It's like,
and he's 34, and he had surgery on 5 different things last September. You know, He was fine in the playoffs. He scored 6 goals. But like I said, you moved him up the lineup, he started to struggle. And it was the same thing last year. I know he was injured last year against the Canucks, right? We know he wasn't 100%. But you know, when he gets in the offensive zone, we did see elements of him being able to do stuff. He can still, and Patrik Allvin is not wrong. He still makes a difference on the boards. That's absolutely the case. I just think Elias Pettersson needs someone with a little more jump on his wing.
You said that,
if you made me do an up-down choice, I'm saying no.
When you said Evander Kane couldn't keep up with the Oilers, good news. He won't have to keep up with the Oilers. He only has to keep up with the Canucks, and that's a different gear than what they don't. The Canucks don't own that gear that the Oilers have.
Unfortunately, not. I mean, funny thing is, Elias Pettersson used to be fast. Maybe he'll be fast again, and this will be immaterial. But
a lot hinges on that.
I mean, everything hinges on that. That is the story. No matter which guys they put in the lineup, everything is on what Elias Pettersson does next year.
Very rarely is they will stick at their pick and make a selection a hot take.
Yeah.
And yet Cam Robinson offered that to us yesterday, and it's kind of a hot take.
It's a hot take. They'll use a draft pick.
Their allotted choice will be used
best one
for the purpose of selecting a player.
Their allotted and best draft pick will be used.
When I asked Alvine, I said, do you expect to pick at 15? He said, well, I haven't had a lot of talks about moving up, but I have had some talks about moving back. I think Cam's right. If you want a probability chart of what is most likely to happen, it is most likely they will pick at 15.
Hard to believe.
But it's hard to believe. They shouldn't, but they probably will. Because of all the reasons we described. It is hard to make trades. But again, that's the job. But they've just seemed gun-shy on stuff this last 6 months.
Well, I think it's coming down to brass tacks and basically who's more desperate. Bill Guerin to get Marco Rossi off his team and willing to accept that 15th overall and a player from the Canucks, or the Canucks getting so desperate that they add to 15th overall and a player for Rossi, or use 15th overall for another player somewhere out there.
I talked to
the answer we're waiting for over the last.
And I talked to a couple of people on the weekend, and I wrote about this, and I said, "Listen, what do you think is affecting the idea of a trade?" And they said, "Well, because and I think Cam was one of the people. 8 to 14 is a bit of a roll of the dice on how it's going to play out, and so it is entirely possible that what the Canucks have is a couple different options based on who's available at 15." That the other teams are a bit like Bill Guerin is kind of saying, okay, well, let's see what I can get out of here. And as we get close to the draft, the pressure points raise and blah, blah, blah. And so, it's entirely possible that Alvine is sitting on a deal that if, whoever's available there is going to be the guy that his potential suitor 5, 6, 7 picks behind him wants. And then they go somewhere. But does that extract to a second-line center? The desire to move up in a not terribly interesting but not terribly exciting draft, to move up 7 spots or whatever. I do not know who's picking 22 off the top of my head, so do not pretend there's a deal in the works there. But I'm just, as an example, I don't think a second-line center gets you that far.
If Dakota Joshua had replicated his tournament or his season and had an 18-goal, 40-point in 80 game season, which is actually less than what he did the previous year because he was 32 points in just 63 games and 18 goals. But if he had basically backed it up, would 15th and Dakota Joshua be tempting enough, do you think, for Bill Guerin?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like the idea of Dakota Joshua as a trade chip, I don't think is crazy. Even though he had a poor season. I mean, he was certainly better in the finish, and I think hopefully people, he like hit cancer, and then he had a hip problem, and like he just took him forever to get going. And I will go back to how badly he felt about his season when I talked to him about his Masterton nomination. I think I told you guys he basically started crying. He was very thankful for the recognition from us, the PHWA chapter, and that we recognized what he'd been through, and that we wanted to salute him for it essentially, and. He was just, he was devastated because the team
wanted to be better.
He played terribly. He had not played very well at all, and he'd been signed to help them be the team that they believed they were supposed to be. So
people also forget he was good in the playoffs last year. 4 goals, 4 assists in 13 games is not bad. Like that's a pretty good pace for his deployment. Like if Bill Guerin looks at that, you'd think that'd be kind of tempting too, but. Got to believe he can bounce back. That's the problem.
But I mean, the funny thing is, if you believe he's that player, then you're bringing in Marco Rossi, who is not Dakota Joshua, right? Like,
nope.
Right? Like, I do kind of think. I mean, imagine putting. I mean, let's talk about what Kane does well. Him and Joshua as a wing pair with whoever, that potentially is a lot of fun. Like, that's a lot of heavy work on the boards. That's a lot of forechecking. That's some good hands around the net. There's something there if it works. But again, it's all on whether Kane can keep going the whole season.
You were struck by the goaltending answer Alvine gave yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, listen, he was asked, it was 2 parts, I guess. I asked him about Demko and his expectation. Basically made it clear, we would like to talk to him about an extension. And then was asked about Archer Silovs by Janar. Basically, does this change? And he certainly didn't shy away from the idea, or he answered it in a way that made me immediately think, okay, they know that Silovs probably has some value. An MVP performance does mean something, even if this is the number 3 goalie, right? These kinds of goalies don't usually go for a lot, but there's something there. I think they certainly are hopeful, and you see guys get flipped around, guys of this kind of type. Get flipped around.
Maybe Edmonton will give them a 4th round pick. The 4th round pick.
Just back and forth.
Exactly.
By the way, it's Ottawa's 4th round pick. Remember that.
Yes.
Originally with Ottawa. But back and forth. There you go.
It's been dosed.
So then it becomes, then you're saying, so Silovs and Podkolzin for Kane and a 4th. How do you feel about that?
Mm-hmm. Or is it a 4th, though?
Is it actually a 1st?
It was your 4th. You sent it to me. Okay. Yeah. Anyways.
You should want more than a 4th for Silovs, though, no?
But I mean, the reality is,
but goaltenders who are waiver out. Yeah. I mean,
no.
There are goaltenders. I take my cues from Woodley in Goal Media. There are goaltenders of this ilk and better that pass through waivers every September when rosters are being set.
Yeah. So you're hoping for someone that's like, we really think this is a guy that could contribute, and we want to do it right now.
Mm-hmm.
But you while that is true that goalies of that ilk do pass through, I don't think that's a game plan.
No.
Going into camp saying that's what we're going to do.
No.
And just lose them.
You also have scenarios in training camp where goaltenders come in with injuries or get hurt in preseason, or we saw that here last year.
There was. I mean, once we started realizing it wasn't always signing Lankin wasn't just about Demko in the end. Mm-hmm. It was a realization to a degree that we do need to go with the 3-headed monster. I think a 3-headed monster is quite likely here next year.
Yeah, and possibly you put a goalie on injured reserve to start the season.
Oh, little Nick
to protect the asset.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is, by the way, that is the fun one.
The team's going to exploit LTIR into the playoffs. Why not exploit it on the front end, especially when it's going away in the CBA? I
guess there is the reporting there. Yeah, that's the whole Kane situation really is is the tipping point, it sounds like. So.
Yep. Anything else, or did we cover it all? Do you have a hot take for us? Did I do great? We didn't even get spicy today. I almost feel like something's missing here. Let me see.
No.
Do you care what a player wears or drives to the game, Patrick?
No. Well,
I don't think anybody in their right mind does. Lou Lamoriello, but he's gone too.
I'm on the record as being very pro, guys. Like, let's have some fun about what you wear to the ring.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want to see the entrances like you see now in the NBA and the WNBA that turn into the fashion show? And, what's their fit today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those photos happen anyway. Mm-hmm. But, the problem, of course, with the Canucks now is a lot of times they don't come in the old Gate 9 way, right? Like, if they come in early enough, they're coming up through the president's suite. Because that way they're right at the dressing room.
Yeah.
So.
Reminds me of a story. The late Ray Emery, when he was goaltending for the Ottawa Senators, had a guy in town car guy in town, and started showing up to the rink in like an orange Lamborghini or something like that, like a really audacious, loud Lamborghini. And like day after day, a different media member would say like, "Hey, Ray, I saw the car you were driving here. I saw the car." And one day, another guy asked, "Hey, say, Ray, well, how about that car you're driving?" And a teammate looked at him and said, "Boy, Ray, you're certainly getting a lot of comments about that car you drive in to the rink every day." And he looked at him and he went, hockey.
Yep.
You're standing out. You're a tall poppy. We can't have this. Hockey. Okay, buddy.
Yeah.
Good hit. Even if we didn't fight, there's always next week.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys.
Enjoy your draft and free agency.
Thank you, sir.
See ya.
Sekerson Price from the historic Wall Center.
The BZ4X, 4 numbers and letters you need to think about. 3 letters, 1 number. We're going to figure this out eventually. The newest addition to the Toyota electric lineup. Joining in the legendary lineup of the Prius that started it all decades ago. But the BZ4X, take one for a test drive. You'll find out what performance, comfort, tech is all about, and stay in the HOV lane.
It's a marvelous vehicle
for the rest of your life.
Here's Chef Marek of The Sheet, and he has a big draft special tomorrow.
Yeah.
Covering the NHL at large with Pierre Maguire and others. Should be a lot of fun. How are you?
Yeah, it'll be good. Yeah, thanks. I'm good. Pretty quiet in Vancouver, I'm suspecting these days.
Yeah.
Nothing big to chew on at all. Just regular ho-hum kind of
Just
week.
wondering about Pew Suter.
Blake was just saying, like, we did, our believe it or not, our show yesterday did some numbers. Evander Kane, he's just a very polarizing player. What did you make of the deal?
Until we found out that there were more teams involved in it, I think my initial thought was, how did Edmonton not have to attach something to the deal? Like, this was like the get out of jail free card for the Oilers here. Now, when you're competing against other teams, now that tends to make more sense. I'm not as sour on this one as I think a lot of people are, and here's why. One, provided he stays healthy. 2, I'm very happy to bet on Evander Kane in the last year of a contract, right? Where it's audition time. And I know that a lot has been made of, and listen, I understand why. I think we all do. All the penalties in the playoffs, specifically against the Florida Panthers, lack of discipline, all those things. Listen, he was like a shark out there. He was looking to neutralize any type of physicality that the Florida Panthers were going to try to impose on the Edmonton Oilers. And as we've talked about before, I'd rather have someone on my team that I have to calm down as opposed to a bunch of players I have to pump up. It's hard to pump guys up. It's a lot easier to calm guys down. So I think fans throw in that sort of combination. Listen, you guys know all about having to, pump someone up who's not really there. That's not Evander Kane. I'll take guys you have to calm down all day long.
Canuck fans will deal with bad penalties in the playoffs.
I was going to say
when they get to them.
Hey, no, but here's the other thing.
Vancouver's got the third best penalty kill. They're fine. They're insulated. It's just no problem.
Plus, everybody in this market knows what it's like when you're going up against the Boston or Florida Campbells. It's a difficult series to win in the Stanley Cup final.
It's waiting.
Do you know who else was involved on Kane?
I don't. I don't know the other teams. That is going to be part of my homework in advance of either today's show or tomorrow's special. But yes, that's a very good question. I do believe that and there always has been, marketplaces for Evander Kane, even though there is that historical baggage that comes along with him. Now, I was told that there were no issues in Edmonton. I was told that everything was fine. This isn't like Winnipeg, Buffalo, San Jose. This isn't like that. I was told that Evander Kane, that there wasn't the friction that there's been elsewhere when I checked in with someone from Edmonton.
But as we've talked about, there's some pretty big horses in that room. There's some pretty big names and stars that anybody with any sense would defer to.
And
not so in Vancouver.
And he came in at a time with the Edmonton Oilers where it was very much, that was the lifeline, right? That was Ken Holland throwing the lifeline for Evander Kane. Like, don't forget, like, the Oilers and specifically Holland were met with a lot of scrutiny when he did that. But I'm told that everything was fine.
Yeah. And so now the question is, what next for the Canucks? Because they've lost 5.125 of cap space to Evander Kane. There is not a lot of crumbs left over to find a second line center in today's inflationary world. So, now it's very real. As much as you say, hey, they didn't spend really any assets to get Evander Kane. Yeah, but now they're going to have to spend assets off their roster to create cap space probably for that second line center.
Yeah. Listen, this is a, outside of, Mitch Marner, for example, like, this is sort of an underwhelming free agent class. If you want to go shopping, if you're gonna do anything, you're gonna have to trade for it. I mean, I think we all expect at the end of the day, John Tavares is most likely going to find some type of agreement with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Otherwise, teams like Anaheim, maybe teams like Utah as well, are going to throw big numbers at John Tavares. Because I did wonder if he could be an option for the Vancouver Canucks. But I think as the days continue here, even though there's still a part on the deal, I think at the end of it, Tavares wants to be in Toronto. Toronto wants to have Tavares there. There's an understanding on both sides, deadline spur deals, and that'll happen. But yeah, Vancouver's going to want to address that second line center hole, as we all know that they will. And it's probably going to be done by trade. I'll tell you what, I would start looking at the New York Islanders. I really, really would. One of the things now with Matthew Darche coming in, first of all, Matthew Darche with the Islanders right now is being tested. Make no mistake, every general manager, every agent, new meat, new GM, he's being tested. And I would imagine veterans like Jim Rutherford, specifically Patrik Allvin, will be testing Matthew Darche as well. And don't forget, the Islanders are a team very much right now that needs to figure out on whose timeline are we doing this. Right? Like, how is this going to happen here? Who's going to be aged out by the time this team actualizes? I'd be looking at the Islanders, because I think a lot of teams are looking at the Islanders right now, especially tomorrow when they draft Matthew Schaefer.
I was going to say I'm somewhat baffled at how it's gotten to maybe we'll trade Noah Dobson, but I'm equally as baffled with maybe we'll trade Noah Dobson but keep Horvat and Barzell. Like, that seems like a little bit of 1 foot in one column, 1 foot in another column.
Trade the 25-year-old, keep the 30-year-old.
No, exactly.
I know. Again, no one has told me definitively, but whenever I see situations like this, I always say to myself, I'm not being told something specifically. Like, there's something else at play here. Is it an issue with the coach? Is it an issue with another player? I don't know. I haven't been told specifically, but your point is the right one, very much the right one, that something we're not really being told something here, which is why, like, I think that the Islanders are going to have to make some decisions on the blue line. Look, Isaiah George is ready to play. Matthew Schaefer may come in as early as next season, although I think he's probably ticketed to go back to Erie. Like their blue line is going to look a lot different. I think they're trying to move Scott Mayfield, trying to convince him that ice time is going to be at a premium for him. Romanoff is another issue altogether. I wonder if he could be on the block as well. But I think the Islanders right now, and we think that, they might be trying to get another top 10 pick so they can bring in James Higgins as well here. It wouldn't surprise anybody if, one of the most frisky teams here are the New York Islanders. Like, look down the middle.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I was talking to someone about this the other day. If I was the New York Islanders, now this doesn't settle a second line center spot for the Vancouver Canucks, but as we're on the Islanders topic here, as everybody now wants this style of player more so than ever, I would be looking to move Casey Cizikas. 2 years, 2.4 per season. They're not going to be doing it on his timeline. Players like that are very much in demand, specifically after we just saw the Florida Panthers win another Stanley Cup. I think we wonder about Jean-Gabriel Pageau and what the future there is. The speculation is, you hang on to him until Christmas, until Cal Ritchie is ready, play 30 games in the American League, then the kid comes up, and then there's that shuffle out, shuffle in between those two. But can you get him before that? Like, I think the Islanders have a lot of decisions here as they try to figure out, okay, we need this whole thing needs a fresh coat of paint. We're not in the Lou era anymore. What do we do? Who's wanted on the voyage? Who's not wanted on the voyage?
Russo's
go ahead.
I was going to say Russo's reporting on the Minnesota Wild situation with Marco Rossi is that now it's points in, points out. You want Marco Rossi? I need the same amount of points from a forward coming back the other way.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot of that, by the way. There's a lot of that, Blake, like around the entire NHL.
Yeah.
Around the entire NHL, everybody wants.
No one wants futures.
Yeah. But it almost does it not feel this way? You guys remember the Montreal Dallas deal so many years ago? Mike Ribeiro for Yanni Niinema, and it was the like, okay, your issue for my issue, and maybe we just kind of saw that with Chicago and Seattle, with Joe Veleno for Andre Burakovsky, two players that we wondered, were they both headed for a buyout here? And each team just sort of saved each other a little bit of money and are going to say, like, okay, we're going to give these guys one more kick at the can. Although I still think that Joe Veleno might be a candidate for a buyout, considering he's under 26 and that's only 1/3. But does it not feel like it's at the point where it's like, to Russo's point with Rossi, it's, okay, points in, points out. We need something of equal value here. But also, teams always have headaches. And do you think we might get okay, you take my issue and I'll take your issue?
But Freddie Gaudreau gets traded from the Wild today. I almost wonder if they're resigning themselves to re-signing Marco Rossi. Is that creating $2 more million of space now? Because they just feel like they got to sign Rossi at this point.
I'm biased because I really like Marco Rossi. I think Marco, and listen, there's a positional need there in Minnesota.
Yeah, there is.
I think that they were very much in the hunt for JJ Peterka, who ends up in Utah. I think there's a side issue with the Utah deal if you guys want to get into as well. But I think that this is a team that was very much in it for JJ Peterka. That didn't work. I do wonder if they do just go back to Marco Rossi. And I really like the player. I like how he performs. I like how hard he works. They're out of salary cap hell now, and finding centers is hard. Finding centers is. Listen, I don't have to tell two guys that host a show about the Vancouver Canucks how hard it is to find centers.
So I hear that Russo points in, points out thing, and I hear one last desperate attempt from Bill Guerin to get a roster player for Marco Rossi. Like, do you think the price tomorrow on the floor? I guess there is no floor anymore.
There's no floor tomorrow.
But do you think the price on the floor tomorrow is futures? The best futures.
I don't think he settles. That's my
They
thought.
don't know. I think we talked about this last week too. I just can't see it. Like, they're not in the green banana business. Like, they have enough. They have enough prospects. They need to turn these. They need to turn. And now, for the first time, there's going to be expectations without the excuse, right? You can't say they have the salary cap handcuffs on, because now this is okay. Now you're going to stand on your own 2 feet. They don't have that excuse to lean on anymore. I would be surprised if they just went back and said, we'll take picks.
A lot of people, I think, last night were wondering, how did Utah get JJ Peterka so cheap? Or was it cheap? You tell me.
I think there's a second part to this. So
Like
I think a
future deal
couple
coming?
things. I think what it does is opens up something that I think the three of us have discussed before on this program. So first of all, yes, that is, like, I don't want to say it's as far as, oh, they robbed the bank and didn't have to wear a mask, but that is overwhelmingly a win for the Utah Mammoth here. Now, I like Michael Kesselring, and I think he's going to play well with Owen Power, and Owen Power probably needs that type of insulation on the right side. I like Josh Doan. I think he's a really good middle six player. None of these rise to the level of the quality of player that is JJ Peterka, and can do the hardest thing in hockey, and that is score goals. The side to all of this, and I was wondering how they were going to get there, but now all of a sudden Utah has opened up a spot on their blue line for a right shot D. We've talked about Aaron Ekblad before. I would not be surprised. We all know Utah's doing big things here, and they have, at least we'll see what they end up doing with the 4th overall pick come Friday. I would not be surprised at all if that's the move that sets up the spot for Aaron Ekblad to fill on the Mammoth blue line. Would that surprise? They need a first. Listen,
no, it wouldn't
Aaron
surprise
Ekblad
either.
playing with Mikhail Sergachev. Can you not see that? Because I could see it all day long.
Yep. The goalie market sounds like it's reasonably robust. What are you hearing there?
I've wondered about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Kevin Adams. I'm sure you saw his press conference the other day where he said like they're fine with both their goaltenders, Luukkonen and Levi. Levi is 20 or 25 games away now from needing waivers. The goalie market is interesting in Vancouver, which is maybe where I should have started, because Artur Silovs, holy smokes, did he ever look and he looked fantastic for Abbotsford. And I'm not sure where you guys sit on this issue, but I've always felt that it's harder to be a goalie in the American League than it is in the NHL, because things aren't perfect in the American League. There's a lot of broken plays and the shot goes off the heel or the toe. Like, things aren't as clean as they are in the NHL. And as a goaltender, when you're always preparing for something clean, which you're going to get in the National Hockey League, it's a lot easier than a lot of the broken stuff that we see in the minors. So I've always maintained that the one place where it's harder to play in the American League is in net, which makes Shilov's performance even that much more impressive. But what do you do? Because the waiver monster is out there.
Yep. And if they're going to sign Thatcher Demko and Darren Dreger, pretty sure that they are, then, yeah, you have to explore the trade market there. You're not going to get that guy through waivers, are you?
I would not think so. I mean, so much of it comes down to timing too. Like, maybe you want to do it early. You want to do it early before everyone makes up their mind.
Jeff,
about, like,
there are Shilovs.
There's
there
such
are
a
Shilovs
timing
level
issue.
goaltenders that get through waivers on roster setting day all the time. We saw it with Jacob Markstrom here in this market, Blake, all those years ago. So that is the time to do it.
But having said, I apologize for interrupting. There is something to the idea of, and we're thinking about the Edmonton Oilers here. There is something to be said of coming back with Skinner, but you want someone else to be a complement to Skinner who could potentially take over, and it wouldn't be the worst idea to look to the American Hockey League to try to find that goaltender. Like, Shilovs has had the incredible run, and he was fantastic. You know, someone else who had a really good season and turned some heads, Vancouver Canucks fans know this guy well, is Michael DiPietro with Providence. Like, Mikey DiPietro had a really, really good year. You know, he got taxi squatted to death, and we wondered, like, oh man, is he getting taxi squatted out of a career here during the pandemic? But thankfully for him and for his career, Michael DiPietro is probably going to be on some team's radar out there. Wouldn't be the worst idea if you're Edmonton, because we're focusing on the NHL goalie market. There's plenty of good goaltenders in the American League.
Who do you like for the Canucks if they keep 15th overall tomorrow?
There's a few. I mean, if there's like, I don't think Kashan Aitchison, the big hard-hitting defenseman from the Barrie Colts, is going to get by the Pittsburgh Penguins. I really don't. But if somehow that happens, that's my guy. If I'm Jim Rutherford, Patrik Allvin. I think you and I, the three of us, have talked about Cole Reshny before, formerly of Victoria, now going to Nodak. I like Cameron Reed, a very safe, steady defenseman for the Kitchener Rangers. He doesn't do one thing that's like super flashy, but it's just like a really solid, consistent defenseman. That would be someone that I would have a look at. And if you're looking for, here we are having the conversation today about centers. If you want a big, strong horse down the middle, I would look at Jack Nesbitt, who's a big, strong, powerful center from the Windsor Spitfires, who will probably be available in that 15 spot as well. Those would be the guys. I mean, Lyndon Lakovic, I would look at as well for Moose Jaw. But I mean, that's the sort of range that we're looking at, or the quality of player that we're looking at the 15th overall pick. I'm still skeptical that they're there though. Like that Vancouver makes that pick. But if they do, like to your point, Matt, like those would be the guys that I think would be in that conversation.
Alvine said yesterday he's had more conversations about moving down than he has moving up. It almost sounds like it's hard to move that pick for NHL roster currency, but it might be easier to move that pick down for something because it's right at the end of what many suspect will be the tier people want to hop into, right, to get their given first round prospect.
Yep. You know what's interesting? Like this is the 1 week. There's always a couple of weeks every year. Free agency is the other one, so they dovetail. Where I'll just be blunt. Everybody lies to you, right? This is smoke screens and black curtains and ignore the man behind the curtain and mirrors and
messaging,
camouflage.
Right?
And
I got a message out there to the media that I'm doing this, but I'm actually doing this.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Don't look over here. Right. Look, it's sleight of hand week. So I always take everything that I hear this week with a grain of salt.
As you should, Jeff.
Everybody is trying to put. I'll tell you, like my favorite story of that was when Brian Berkey told me when he was the manager of the Hartford Whalers, he said he deliberately would leave fake Hartford Whaler draft lists in the lobby of the team hotels to throw him off. And that was like specifically because they wanted to get Prong, or they had to make the deal with San Jose and all that. But specifically, he would leave Hartford Whaler draft lists, phony ones, all over the place in the lobby. So teams be like, dumb Berkey left his draft list. But that's the level that we're talking about here. So I kind of grain of salt everything as it leads into the draft, because we all talk about this every year. There's going to be so many trades. This team's going to move. They're going to swap picks. And then everybody goes and makes their picks.
Yeah. Maybe somebody will do the NBA draft trade of letting the player get drafted by a certain team and then trade to a different team.
Scott Van Pelt is my hero because he went on a stand for this. Like, enough is enough.
Yeah.
Stop asking the kid to come up in the biggest moment of his life.
Wear a different hat.
Put on the Houston Rockets hat when everybody in the world knows he's going to Phoenix. And 25 years later, his kids say, "Daddy, why were you wearing a Houston Rockets hat at the draft when you never played for the Rockets?" "Well, son, because the new league year didn't begin until July 7th and administration overall, like, let's put out visuals that are inaccurate in the second that they are taken."
Ridiculous.
Daddy, why
so that the accountants and the lawyers in the new league year are happy with our clean admin. Ridiculous.
Why didn't things work out with Houston, Daddy? It's the same thing. I remember
talking
to Sam Gagne years and years ago, and just tongue in cheek, I said, "Oh, how come things never worked out with you in Tampa?" Well, I was there for about 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing it does is, oh my God, did you know that the Milwaukee Bucks traded Dirk Nowitzki? It's like, what? What do you mean they traded Dirk Nowitzki? He played 20 years, all of them for Dallas. No. He was drafted by Milwaukee on draft night, and they traded him for a pick, a few picks around that, and so and so and so and so. It's stupid. I'm glad the NHL and I'm glad the NHL is going back to a
centralized draft or a on-the-floor draft next
Well,
year.
listen,
it's the one advantage they had. It was the one sort of piece of drama that they created that other drafts and leagues didn't create.
I love the way they do it. I always have. And you know who else loves it too? The commissioner. And trust me, this is a victory lap for Gary Bettman, and he is going out the door and around the block to remind everybody this is what the managers wanted. Not the NHL office, not the commissioner. This is what the general managers wanted. I'll change it back if you want. But let's remember, this is what you wanted.
Like, I have a hard time picking sides in a Gary Bettman versus Steve Yzerman feud, but in this case, I am with Gary Bettman. Go Commish, well done.
Yep.
Hot draft take for you.
Okay.
Radim Mertka, the Seattle defenseman.
Big,
he goes,
6'6".
He goes in the top 5.
5.
Hot take.
Top 10 would be a hot take.
Nashville, Barry Trotz at number 5. What do they do? They draft defensemen, they draft more defensemen, then they trade defensemen for forwards. And then Utah, take a look at the pterodactyls that Utah has drafted in the past. I wonder, plus these forwards, it's like the second line center draft. I would not be surprised if a lot of these teams aren't gaga over these forwards and look at a 6'6" defender. Is more valuable. Okay.
The one tiny little thing about Nashville is for so long they've tried to grab scoring centers, scoring forwards. At their own draft, they tried to trade up with the San Jose Sharks to grab Will Smith, Askarov. They were dangling San Jose, and them actually eventually got around to doing that deal. And they also wanted Gabe Perreault. The Rangers got him one before Nashville's second pick in that draft, and they ended up taking Tanner Mollendijk instead. But there was very, very much a desire from Nashville to A, move up, and 2, to grab Perreault instead of Mollendijk.
You're on a very tight schedule. You're in very high demand, so we have to get to the Jeff Merrick Easter egg. Do you want degree of difficulty, high or low?
Low.
Let's go high. Let's go high.
Okay. There has been one instance in the modern draft where defensemen were selected first overall in 3 consecutive years. Name those defensemen.
Oh, God. 3 defensemen. Was that like the Berard, Redden era?
Brian Berard is correct. And I will tell you, he was the middle. There was a defenseman who went the year before him. There was a defenseman that went the year after him.
You want to give me the teams?
Florida and Ottawa.
Where was Phillips?
Chris Phillips, 96. Very good, Blake.
And Ed Jovanovski.
Very good, Jeff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Incidentally, who selected Brian Berard?
Islanders.
From Woonsocket, Rhode Island, he told the then awful expansion-era Ottawa Senators he would prefer not to play for them, and so they swapped him for number 2 overall Wade Redden. Who was selected by the New York Islanders. Have a wonderful draft. We'll be watching.
See you, buddy.
Thank you for this. Until next week.
Guys.
Sekeres Price from the historic Wall Center. If you're heading to a game in downtown Vancouver, make a staycation out of it. Stay right here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Book an exclusive Sekeres Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Well, Vancouver Whitecaps FC lose 5-3, 8 goals in a soccer. 5-3 to the expansion San Diego side. And they cede first place in the MLS West for the first time this season, albeit they have a game in hand. They fell behind this match 2-0. They got it back to 2-1, and then immediately gave up a goal to make it 3-1, and then immediately gave up another goal to make it 4-1. It's goodnight Irene, or at least goodnight Milan Iloski, with 4 goals in his first MLS start. Where have they been hiding this guy? Why was this his first start if he could score 4 goals in a match?
The MLS super sub. He had come in on a torrid pace of 5 goals, all as subs. He had 5 goals in 200 minutes, so a goal every 41-ish minutes. And you thought, oh, it's a great stat. That'll die here now because he's starting. No, the stat has actually gotten better now. with a 4-goal in, what did he play, 70 minutes yesterday?
He had a hat trick in a 9-minute span. And look, Expansion San Diego is obviously pretty well coached. They're in first place. But if I were to offer some advice, Coach, this guy's got to start. This guy's got to play a lot.
Yeah.
In fact, until he drops dead on the pitch, I just play him. And look, we had been wondering, and in fact, we're somewhat amazed that the injuries, the schedule, the international departures would at some point come home to roost with the Caps, right?
Yes, they are roosting.
Needless to say, there's trouble in the henhouse.
And of course, the most troubling part is, even for the healthy ones, the return is not imminent. You would think Canada wins their next game and the United States win its next game. So you're talking at least another week for the return of the guys at the Gold Cup. And then there are the guys that have been injured at the Gold Cup that are not coming back anytime soon, like Ali Ahmed and Sam Adekubi, much less Ryan Gauld's return, very much in doubt still as well. So
Ahmed's 6 to 8 weeks with that ankle injury, but those ones are tough. It could be.
Yeah, and Sam's gone for the year. We saw Tate Johnson completely annihilated last night. So they need, in the transfer window, to go find a left back. It's abundantly clear now.
And Takaoka, named an MLS All-Star, gives up 5 goals that night.
Oops. Now, again, I don't blame him. I have been a critic of Takaoka in the past. That was not on him last night. That was terrible defensive play.
Emergency call-up Antoine Couplin with his first MLS goal.
Yeah.
It's Vancouver at LAFC Sunday at 6:30. That is the big standalone primetime MLS Apple window. So they'll play before the whole league. The whole league watching. And big day of soccer Sunday, because prior to that match, 1 p.m., Canada, Guatemala in a Gold Cup quarterfinal. It's a good draw for Canada, given some of the alternatives.
Yep.
The BC Lions face 3-0 Saskatchewan Saturday in Regina, the first of 3 games between these sides. Nathan Rourke was limited at practice on Thursday. Dejan Allen, Josh Woods, defense lineman Tavai all missed practice. Stanley Berryhill, the wide receiver, was limited. Vancouver's Christian Covington returned to practice. That's good. The Lions, look, they had high hopes for this Jermaine Jackson returning kicks, and he may well still work out. They've signed an interesting player here, Phillip Brooks. And I say he's interesting because he comes from Kansas State, where they have a long history of electric return guys. Special teams has been a huge focus at that program for a long, long time, including the return game. Brandon Banks, league MOP for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, was once a Kansas State return guy. Darren Sproles, who had an awesome NFL career. Former Seahawks Tyler Lockett and DJ Reed were both kick returns at Kansas State. And former Lion Aaron Lockett, member of their 06 Grey Cup team, was their return specialist. So we'll see if Brooks can wedge his way into that return game. I know that was something you were looking for this year. Stop being safe on returns. Not so scary, Terry. Let's hit some home runs on the punt return and the kick return game. Here's the thing. It's always early in the CFL schedule. You have more opportunity to make up ground in the CFL than in other leagues. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. We saw this one, last year with Winnipeg starting winless for 05. And I remember the 2011 Lions, their last Grey Cup team, 0-5, 1-6. But I will say, lose Saturday in Regina, you're 1-3, Saskatchewan's 4-0. That's a long way up. And potentially Winnipeg could be 3-0 with a win against Edmonton at home tonight. And you've already lost the tiebreaker against Winnipeg because you lost both games. So we're not there yet. But if you lose this one, and especially with 2 more on the road at Montreal and at Edmonton, things are going to start to get a little nervous.
Well, you lose this one, you basically have made it a necessity that you go on a run at some point in the season, that you win 3 or 4 in a row.
Yes.
If you win this one, no, then you're kind of win-lossing your way to mediocrity for now, and anything is possible. But you
lose
need
this
a streak.
One. Yeah, you lose this one. You're 3 back of first place in the West already with a loss to the team that you're chasing. So you would probably need to win both head-to-heads from that point forward. Anyways, it's early, but just something to keep in mind. Vancouver Canadians lose 5-4 to Tri-City at the Nat last night. Their first loss at home since May 29th. That's right. They went almost a full month between losses on their home diamond, won 10 straight before the Nat faithful. Gage Stanifer struck out 9 over 4 innings as his prospect star continues to rise. Aaron Parker, Eddie Micheletti with home runs. Chris McElvain starts tonight. It's post-game fireworks. You got the Fortis Nooner tomorrow, the Marvel Superhero Day Saturday, 1 p.m. first pitch with a comic book giveaway. Something to note here, this is the last Saturday, 1 p.m. start of the season. Seas have done this for several years now.
Warmer
they go 1 p.m.
now.
Yeah, in the spring. Then once we get into summer or when the kids get out of school, July onwards, it's the 7 p.m. Saturday night starts. And remember, they're home here next week as well with a special Canada Day Tuesday nooner at the Nat. Tickets 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com. Final results of the Whistler Golf poll question from Wednesday. What is your biggest issue with the Canucks acquisition of Evander Kane? Blake knows the results, so we're not going to have him guess. Character/distraction got 59% of the vote. We both thought that would win. We thought cap hit would be higher. We both voted for cap hit. It got 16%. It finished behind none. I like it. Got 18%.
Wow.
Age durability got 7%. DJ, age, character, cap hit, fucking all of it. For fuck's sakes.
Yeah, I think that.
Sean, the fact that he isn't a very effective hockey player. Our old friend Cam Cole, ex of the Vancouver Sun, weighing in from the Okanagan. Costly penalties. Yeah. Really, Twitter needs to give us more options for a bold question like that.
You can weave that into character.
We even slashed some of these. Age durability was all, and we still didn't have enough cells. Roy, no issue. Welcome home. Just wish the Oilers retained, but no big deal. It's just 1 year. Kevin, just go with it. Embrace the crazy.
Yeah, not embrace the hard now.
Thank you for your submissions. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program and beyond. Did you guys screw anything up?
It was a perfect freaking day. I don't know what changed yesterday, but it was a lot of people are saying that we've never been without errors and omissions quite like the best errors and omissions free show of all time.
I wonder what changed, huh? So here's the thing. And thanks to Jeff for sitting in yesterday. So last year, June 25th, I made that ace at Northlands with you and Jeff and Bruff. And Jeff had the video posted like before we even got to the next tee box. Like
He's a reporter.
It was unbelievable. I'm like, Jeff, you've already
Sports
posted this? He's like, of course. I'm like, oh my God. So my phone is blowing up. I'm like, and I'm getting all these replies. What are you going to do with the ball? What are you going to do to celebrate, commemorate? And I'm like, I'm not a big knickknacks guy, memento. I'm not going to like mount the ball in a place of prestige in the apartment. Like, first of all, Carmen's not going for that. Secondly, it's a recreational round of golf, for God's sakes. And then our friend Kevin Oates, the GM and the head pro from Rivershore Golf Club in Kamloops, weighed in. And he sent me a note. He said, man, I'll be damned. I made a hole-in-one the same day. And we started talking, what'd you hit, club, hole. And then he suggested we should celebrate our anniversary. We should play a round of golf on this day every year henceforth as the reminder instead of a memento. And I'm like, that is the best damn idea. So yesterday I went out to Sandpiper because it's like halfway between Kamloops and Kits and had a marvelous round of golf with Kevin Oates. So thank you, Kevin, for that. And thank you to the good people at Sandpiper. Okay. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Remember tomorrow.
Big show tomorrow. We're going to be on shortly after the draft starts. Not noon Pacific time because we could do a show at noon Pacific time, and who knows what happens a few hours later.
Now, if there's a massive trade an hour before the draft starts, we'll
be there.
We'll
the
start
emergency
early.
show, the emergency podcast could well be a thing tomorrow during the day, but barring any Canuck activity, our show is going to begin shortly after the because they have all the festivities,
and it sounds like they might make the freaking I'm going to have to cram tonight because I was not anticipating doing a drafty draft show. I thought I'd be doing the tradey draft show. It's going to be a draft show now, apparently.
Last minute. Blake was the university student who slid his paper under the professor's door at 7:59 a.m. because it was due at 8 a.m. on Monday.
Deadlines.
Had time, used time, every last minute.
Don't worry. I've had my comeuppance. I have 4 children that have unfortunately taken after me, and well, except for my oldest. No. But
would you please clean your room? Dad, you told me I have to clean it by tonight.
No, but school.
Still 3 in the
I just watched
afternoon.
them all do the cramming. I'm like, God damn.
Why didn't they take after their mom?
It's in
Their
the
mom's
blood.
put together.
Very prepared.
Appreciate you joining us, everybody connecting with the show. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms. Typically noon Pacific time weekdays, except for tomorrow draft day. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about and keep it local.